They tried to put the fire out. Instead, they gave it away underground. In May 1962, in a small coal mining town in Pennsylvania, a fire was lit. At the time, it seemed ordinary. Routine. The kind of decision no one expects to question later. The mine was old. The tunnels were believed to be inactive. Nothing beneath the surface was thought to be connected anymore. So the fire was allowed to burn. What almost no one accounted for was this. An underground coal mine is not a hole. It is a system. A network of tunnels, fractures, and airflow paths built over decades to move heat, gas, and oxygen. Once the fire reached combustible material below the surface, it did not stay where it started. It found air. And with air, it found a way to survive. From that moment on, this was no longer a simple cleanup task. Underground fires do not behave like surface fires. They do not burn in straight lines. They do not remain where humans expect them to be. Once they enter a mine system, they stop belonging to the people who started them. What followed was not panic, but confidence. The belief that the fire could still be sealed, cooled, and cut off. And if that confidence had been justified, perhaps what came next would never have happened. At first, the fire was treated like a problem with a solution. Something that could be handled, contained, put out. So the response began. Crews returned to the site. They dug. They flooded sections of the mine. They drilled boreholes and pumped water and materials underground. The goal was simple: cut off the oxygen, cool the fire, seal it in place. On paper, the plan made sense. But underground, something else was happening. Each new hole became a new pathway. Each attempt to block the fire changed how air moved through the mine. Instead of shrinking, the system adapted. Heat traveled. Gases shifted direction. Pressure built where no one expected it. The fire didn't stop. It moved. And the deeper engineers tried to intervene, the harder it became to tell where the fire actually was. Maps stopped being reliable. Boundaries blurred. What had once been a known mine became an active, unpredictable environment. By the late 1970s, the effort was no longer about putting the fire out. It was about keeping up. Millions of dollars were spent just to slow its progress, to monitor temperatures, to track gases, to guess where the fire might surface next. And with every new attempt to seal it underground, the same pattern repeated. The fire found air. It found space. It found another way forward. What had started as a localized problem was now something much larger, a system reacting to human pressure. And the more force that was applied, the more unstable the situation became. This was the moment when control began to slip. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but gradually, quietly, and in ways that would soon be impossible to ignore. At first, the changes were subtle, easy to dismiss, easy to explain away. A patch of ground that felt warmer than it should have. A thin stream of smoke rising from cracks in the earth. Carbon monoxide showing up where no one expected it. Individually, none of it seemed alarming. But taken together, it was the first sign that the system was responding. The fire was no longer hidden deep inside the mine. It was interacting with the surface. New vents began to appear, not where engineers had sealed the mine, but where the ground found its own weaknesses. Some vents released heat. Others released gas, and some did both. When one opening was blocked, another formed somewhere else. Not randomly, but predictably along paths of least resistance. The ground itself was changing. Temperatures shifted. Soil dried out. Foundations began to crack. And with each new measurement, it became harder to define where the danger ended. This wasn't a fire contained in a tunnel anymore. It was a moving boundary, an underground process, finding new ways to express itself. By the time these warnings could no longer be ignored, the problem had already outgrown its original frame. The fire was no longer just burning. It was communicating through heat, through gas, through the slow deformation of the land above it. And this was the moment when the question changed. Not how to put the fire out, but how close anyone could safely get to it anymore. At some point, the warnings stopped being subtle. The ground began to fail. Not all at once, but in sudden, unpredictable collapses. Sinkholes opened without notice. The surface gave way where nothing was supposed to happen. What had been solid was no longer stable. And then the fire reached something that could not be ignored. A major roadway. Route 61 cut directly through the area, a lifeline for the region. As heat rose from below, the pavement cracked, buckled, collapsed. Repairs were attempted. Stabilization was tried. But the ground would not hold. Each fix was temporary. Each reopening was followed by new damage. Eventually, the conclusion became unavoidable. This was no longer an isolated underground fire. It was a surface-level threat with no clear boundary. Engineers could no longer say where it was safe to stand. Officials could no longer draw a reliable danger zone. The idea of control, of containment, collapsed along with the road. Route 61 was closed indefinitely, not as a precaution, but as an admission that the system below was dictating the rules above. By now, the question was no longer how to stop the fire. It was how long anyone could remain nearby without being at risk. This was the moment when intervention reached its limit. Not because there were no more tools, but because every tool applied made the outcome less predictable. The boundary between what was manageable and what was dangerous had disappeared. And once that boundary was gone, control went with it. After the road was closed, after the ground had already given way, there was still one belief left standing: that the system could be sealed. Not fixed, not eliminated, but locked in place. Engineers returned with a narrower goal: block the vents, isolate the heat, cut off the pathway one by one. Barriers were built, openings were filled, sections were sealed as tightly as possible. This time, the effort was cautious, measured, deliberate. Every move was calculated to avoid creating new fractures. But underground, the same pattern reappeared. When one pathway was closed, pressure shifted. Gas searched for another route. Heat followed the weakest point. And somewhere else, the ground responded. A new vent opened, not where the fire was expected to be, but where the system allowed it. The fire did not break through the seals. It moved around them. Each attempt to contain it forced the system to reorganize itself. Not violently, not suddenly, but efficiently. What became clear was something difficult to accept. This was not a structure that could be locked. It was a process, and processes do not stay sealed. They adjust, they reroute, they persist. By the time this final effort ran its course, the objective had quietly changed. No longer to stop the fire, but to understand what it would take to live with it. And for the first time, that question had an uncomfortable answer. Eventually, there was nothing left to escalate. No new technique to try. No deeper layer to seal. The question was no longer how to stop the fire. It was whether continuing to intervene made things safer or more dangerous. Studies were reviewed. Costs were recalculated. To extinguish the fire completely would require hundreds of millions of dollars, years of excavation, massive disruption to everything above the ground. And even then, success was not guaranteed. Each attempt risked opening new pathways, new fractures, new vents. At some point, the conclusion became unavoidable. Intervention itself had become the risk. So the strategy changed, not to defeat the fire, but to step away from it. The decision was made to stop active suppression. Instead, the area would be monitored, measured, restricted, and the people who lived above the system were given a choice: stay and accept an unknown risk, or leave. Over time, most left. Homes were purchased. Buildings were demolished. Entire block fell silent. What remained was not a victory and not a failure. It was an admission that some systems do not yield to force, that control has limits, and that sometimes the most responsible decision is not to push further, but to stop. Today, the fire is still there. Not visible, not accessible, but not gone. Beneath the empty streets, beneath the fenced-off land, the system continued on its own terms. There are no crews trying to seal it anymore. No new plans to put it out. Instead, there is monitoring. Sensors, measurements, models. Heat is tracked. Gas is measured. Movement below the surface is watched from a distance. The town above is largely silent now. Most homes are gone. Entire blocks have been erased. What remains is a place designed not for living, but for avoidance. And that raises a question with no clear answer. How long can something like this continue? Decades? Centuries? Underground coal fires are known to burn far longer than a human lifetime. And no one can say with certainty when this one will end, or how. What is known is that the fire is no longer being fought. It is being managed, observed, contained at a distance, allowed to exist, not because it is harmless, but because every attempt to control it directly made it less predictable. This is what remains when intervention reaches its limit. A system still active, a place left behind, and a decision that cannot be undone. The fire below Centralia was not defeated. It was outlasted. And now it waits as a reminder that some depths, once disturbed, do not easily return to silence.